My definition of a CEO is you have to create incredible vision that would inspire people to come into your organization, step one. Step two, you have to attract a talent and you have to be able to develop the talent so it works well within your organization. That's the, in my opinion, three primary roles of a real estate team CEO, right? On there. So again, don't have those skills. So I teach them how to create vision and how to attract the right people and develop them.
Hello, everyone. Sergio Tiffer here, and welcome back to Cracking the Code. Today, we're asking a question that every successful real estate team owner should probably ask themselves. Are you actually building a great business or just a really demanding job? Our guest today is Mike Schumm, co-founder of Profytz Coaching, entrepreneur, investor, and executive coach who has spent years working with high-performing real estate teams. Mike's approach goes beyond increasing transactions and GCI. He focuses on what happens behind the numbers: profitability, leadership, systems, accountability, and ultimately building a business that can grow without depending entirely on its owner. All right, let's dive into it. Good morning. How you doing? Thank you for joining us.
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me today. I'm excited to share.
No, absolutely. Thank you for coming in. I know you're going to share a lot of valuable things with our audience.
Yeah.
And for the ones that don't know you, do you want to do a little introduction about yourself?
Yeah, I'll give you a short introduction. So, kind of the path that got me to where I am today was when I was graduated high school. I didn't know what to do. We were very poor. I didn't have money. So, my uncle said, if you go to a library, there's books there. You can learn anything. So, I don't know why, but I went to the library and I grabbed a book that said how to paint like a professional. And then at 17, I started a painting company. And that led to a construction company. These were in Long Island. And then I don't know, I just had an urge to drive to Florida. And I moved down there and I built a national franchise, a cleaning franchise, and a property management company. I bought my first house at like 20, I think it was, and then had an opportunity to move back to New York and buy another house, and then purchase a meat distribution company up there. And then, yeah, just so it's the beginning of my life, just I was reading a lot of books on small businesses and how to build businesses. I probably read about 500 books on the subject matter. And I was really just learning by trial and error how to build an organization, a company. But always my focus from day one, and my biggest focus now, hence the name of the company, is how to make a profitable company. And my idea for the best types of companies are building companies that have the least amount of noise, the least amount of people, but create the biggest bottom line.
People call it boring companies, right? Those are the
Yeah.
ones that make the most money. So I mean, over 35 years of building businesses across multiple lanes. How do you
Yeah.
land on coaching and real estate? How did that happen?
Like everything is an accident, honestly. Like I just did something called human design, where it's fascinating. The day you're born, the time you're born, and location kind of presets who you are and how you operate. So I'm not a creator or have an idea. I'm like, oh, I'm going to build this company. Is that people call me, I bump into people, and there's an opportunity. And I see the opportunity. I'll either seize it myself or partner with someone. And so it happened. I was explaining I had that meat distribution company out of Manhattan for about, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And I built it up really, really nice. And I love to work. So when I'm not, doing consulting work now, I study business case studies at night. And I'm reading books on businesses. So my hobby and my job are one and the same because I just love it so much. And it's the only thing I've really done now for probably close to 40 years on here. So I built the meat company so well, it became a 20-hour a day business. And in 1999, I had a son, and my dad left when I was 4. So I quickly learned if you're going to bring someone into this life, you need to be present for them. So I was like, well, this business is not the right business to raise a child in. So then I sold the meat business. And then, funny story, actually, I'll give you. I was like, I read a book that said, if you really want to make a lot of money and have the best life, find something that you love to do and find a way to make money doing it on there that you can be really good at, which is actually a chapter in a book called Good to Great called the Headshot Concept. So I'm thinking, what do I like to do? What do I want to do? And at that time, growing up so poor, I never traveled. So I'm going to go into a travel business. I'm going to make a lot of money and see the world. And I memorized every airport code in the country. And I got a job at a little retailer. I go, well, this is my personality. I'm 0 or 120. Like there's nothing I do partially halfway. So I figured I'm going to be in a travel business. I got to know all the airport codes. And then I got a job at the local retailer, how to do local stuff. And then I got a job at a wholesaler, learning how to oversee tours and those kind of things worked. And then right around the same time, now the former CEO of Zillow created the same exact product as Zillow for the travel industry. In 1997, it was called Expedia.com, which gave
Oh, that's
consumers
right.
access.
That's
Yeah, to
right.
book their own. And that's what Zillow does, right? It gives consumers access to the information they have. So hotels and airlines stopped paying commissions because people were just booking or saving money, kind of squeezing out the local little travel agent and strip malls there. And I don't know. Luckily, I have a good intuition and a brainstorm. I was like, man, how am I going to make money? Then I read some more. You can do overseas tours, but if they don't pay you, how are you going to collect? You're going to fly to China or Asia or Europe to get your money? I said, man, this doesn't seem right. I was like, let me see if I can think of something else. So I looked at these portfolios of companies I've had, right? A carpentry company, a painting company, a property management. We supported some HOAs. I owned a few houses. I was like, real estate. They all kind of applied to houses in one way or another there. So I got my real estate license in 2003. And I was working at Douglas Elliman, this luxury brokerage, right? Well known. And then, but because of my background, I started my real estate career not as a real estate salesperson, but as a business owner. So I said, I need an admin. I need someone to answer the phones, do the emails, because there's an
Right.
old phrase in business: if you don't have an admin, you are an admin. And but that was never my jam. Like sitting at a computer, punching the keyboard, and uploading. Back then, actually, there was one of the first CRMs was Top Producer. It was called. And it came with like 8 or 10 floppy disks. You had to load these in all day, one by one. I was like, this is not something I'm going to do. So I hired an admin the first day, and quickly hired someone to help me in marketing. And then I started to bring in some agents. And then I remember at one point they were like, what are you doing? We have a marketing department. We have girls that kind of work the front desk to help you. I said, I don't know. This is kind of what I know how to do. So I was building this organization. And another like funny coincidence, in 2003, Gary Keller wrote a book called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. And in that book, one of the chapters was how to build a seventh level team. He called it. It was essentially building a business more than just selling homes. So I was kind of doing that started in 2003, and it worked out pretty well. So I was chugging along and built my team to a point where I actually left the team to build a couple of restaurants, and for a whole year. So I was building the restaurants. Like another opportunity came. I was trying to help a client find a small restaurant place for himself, but the market was really hot at the time, and there was no small places. And we ran across this like 3-story building with an elevator, and he's like, wow, this would be cool, but I don't really have credit or money and stuff. So, well, I do, and I know a lot of contractors. Like this building had been closed for years. I remember he saw it in the wintertime, and there's actually snow on the inside of the building because they'd stolen the air conditioners off the roof on there. So, but then I realized I had built a business. I didn't have a job. When I came back to the real estate business the following year, it was actually bigger and it had grown on its own without any of my input on there. So, right around 2014, I think it was, Tom Ferry had left his dad's company, Mike Ferry Coaching, and I think I was working with a coach there, if I remember, and they were like, "Hey, you ever consider coaching?" And I was like, "I grew up really poor. I just want to make money. If you pay me money, I'll pretty much do anything." Sure. So I started coaching, and then that OCD, memorizing all the airport codes, was kicked in again. So I took on one client, two clients, three, and quickly I was up to 120 individual solo agents, helping them to learn sales. Because when all these businesses I created, I was a salesperson. I had to learn how to sell meat, sell painting, sell. So I developed a lot of really good sales skills on there. So then I started working there, and then this is when the industry started to change a little bit. And then I noticed it in my schedule actually. some of my clients were more entrepreneurial. I was explaining how I built my company, and they wanted to build something more like that, to build a company and own a business versus just selling houses. And that's also around the time where ancillary started coming in, where a real estate organization could team up with mortgage, title, escrow, insurances, and all that good stuff. So essentially, my schedule then changed from these solo agents to about, I think, 50 or so entrepreneurial real estate agents that wanted to build these organizations similar to mine. So what happened there, as I realized, everyone on my schedule, even to today, has the same backstory. I happened to be a really good real estate agent, and then I got so busy I needed some help. So I found a friend, a neighbor, someone in the office to help me here, help me there, but not really knowing what they were doing. There was no job descriptions or SOPs. They weren't sure how to pay them. They weren't definitely sure how to train them properly for these roles because nobody in my schedule, I shouldn't say that, hardly anyone in my schedule ever went to business school, right? They didn't have business acumen. And I had, at this point, many, many years of business acumen from building businesses and then reading all these books. And funny enough, now that I think about it, I actually had two people in my schedule, long-term clients, and one of them went to the Wharton School of Business, and the other went to Harvard School of Business. Two of my most successful clients, but they were still leaning on me for this, knowledge on how to build out these organizations really well. So I started helping them, and then it was interesting is that the markets were really good. So I always tell people, yeah, I know a lot about business and I can help them build, but if you're in my schedule, you are a very hard worker and you're really smart. Like, and with that combination of me kind of guiding them through how to build a business, is I have a unique, I guess, perspective on business. Is I can see what the puzzle is supposed to look like at the end of the project. So I kind of know what piece goes next, and then we need to put this piece next to that one, and the picture starts to get clearer and bigger. And then every week there's just a chess move. All right, this week we're going to do this, and that week we're going to do that. And what most people don't know, speaking in Park City, to build an organization that works and is profitable in almost any industry, it takes about 2.5 or 3 years. So it's literally me speaking with them every week. All right, I'm going to do this week, that this week. And essentially, I wasn't teaching them how to sell houses anymore. I was teaching them the number two most important thing in building any organization after a great CEO that has vision is how to build a leadership team. If you have the right
Right.
leadership team, you can go far. If you don't have the right leadership team, you will struggle. So then we started building leadership teams, and those teams, over the course of taking my advice and working really hard, became some of the biggest, best, most profitable companies all over the U.S. and Canada. And then the word got out while I was over there about all the success my clients were having, so much greater than any other coach around. That I started getting more and more calls. But when you're working with 50 large organizations, my wife and I were getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, doing 18 Zoom calls a day, every
Wow.
day. I recommend that to nobody. It's a grueling schedule, but the demand was there, and a lot of this was during COVID times. So I think I amassed about 30,000 coaching calls through COVID and right around those times there, which was awesome. But then, as I was helping them, quite frankly, I was also learning. I was learning how different models work in different marketplaces, and rural areas to vertical living to luxury. So yeah, I was helping them, but I was getting this knowledge base how over time I could help anyone in the U.S. or Canada, no matter your market, if you wanted a larger team or a smaller team, kind of there. And I had these 30 teams on a waiting list for years. Hey, can you help us? Like I'm not getting up any earlier than 3 o'clock. And I kind of felt bad, but just the person I am, I like to help as many people as I can. So a lot of them I didn't get an opportunity to work with because if you're in my schedule, you literally were making more and more money year after year after year, and you didn't want to go anywhere because it was working, right? Everyone was scaling. And then I created like a mini ecosystem, which was another secret to success. Is it wasn't just always me one-on-one with them. We created some mastermind for to get a bunch of these team leaders together on a regular basis, sales managers and ops, so they could also learn from each other. As an example, around this time is when Zillow came out with their Flex program. Totally new. No one really knew what it was, how to pay the agents, how to create pods. But when you get, I don't know, a couple dozen of us really smart people collaborating together, and hey, I did this and it worked. Native was growing faster than almost all other organizations in the country, which was pretty
Right.
cool, pretty cool to see. And then, unfortunately, there's a great story by Jim Rohn. He talks about often called the Four Seasons. And the Four Seasons says, perpetually in life and in business, we're going to go through the four seasons. And what happens in the spring? Well, we plant the seeds, and if we water the seeds, they grow during the summer. And the fall is the harvest, right? And you get to capitalize and profit from the hard work. But in your personal life, in your business, what season comes after every fall is winter. So as I would say, I'm just peaking out in my career. The clients are doing great. My son got extremely ill, which I won't go into too details, but I had to call Tom and say, Tom, I don't know if I quit, I retired, but my son needs me, and I have to help him get healthy again. So when I made that call, it kicked off a 1 year non compete, and I got a lot of calls every week based on what I did. But I learned from the meat business, right? You have one reputation, your word is your word, and you never go back on it. So I just turned down every opportunity. So I told Tom I signed this contract with him. So actually, that year, interesting enough, is I got picked up by a new prop tech startup company, and then I became an investor, their industry advisor, and I helped them build out this new product, which is soon to launch actually. So hope it does well when that comes out. And then after that, I got a call from a friend when I was starting to scale these companies. A product called Sisu had launched around
Right.
2018 or so, which, if you don't know, guys, is a data intelligence dashboard that connects right to your CRM and gives you real time data on leading and lagging indicators, percentages, numbers, like everything. I'm a data driven consultant. So I was like, wow, this is like Christmas for me. So I would just say, hey, if you're working with me, just call Brian, tell me you need this product. I got to see your data in real time. So he just called me actually, Brian, I think a couple of weeks ago. Mike, I just want to thank you. I remember when I first started the company, you sent me like 40 clients. Like you're like our top salesperson and really helped them get the company off the ground. So I guess somehow through the grapevine, Brian had learned I was not doing any of his coaching stuff. And he said, why don't you come to Salt Lake and meet my wife? I think you and her have some synergy or something. And I said, who's your wife? And interesting is she's really big in the real estate circles, more on the West Coast, and my influence was more on the East Coast. So I said, sure. So I was at a friend's wedding actually in Mexico, and me and my wife just flew to Salt Lake, and we just kind of met each other, knew nothing about each other. And I said, what do you do? And I kind of explained what I do. So we realized there was a need in the industry that there was the a lot of these teams needed help, but a little different than the way I used to do it. So we decided to launch a consulting company more as a fractional CEO. Because at this point, building all my own companies and helping probably hundreds of other agents and
Is that
teams
only
build.
real estate oriented, or you're willing, like, are you doing any type of CEO?
No, no, it's real estate heavy, but in my schedule now, I have a national title company, a national escrow company, I have a construction company, I've got a master electrician we're helping. So just because all my I don't know, people know me because I've been in real estate now since 2003, but no, business is business. If you
Right.
understand the fundamentals, I don't teach anything unique, new, fancy dancy, shiny penny stuff. I just teach the fundamentals, and that applies to all businesses there. But again, the real estate people just keep calling and coming on. So we launched a company, and then what I'm able to do when it first started was to analyze their business and then understand where they needed the most help, and whether it was recruiting, building systems, building out their economic model, maybe, or other things like that. And then I told them, I look at the relationship more as a partnership, kind of like a fractional CEO. I'm going to help guide you how to build your leadership team or train them on there. And then we've been doing that now for about 3 years or so, 3 years, something like that. But now it's funny we're having the call now, but the company's about to reinvent itself again. So I'm getting in that position again, like I was earlier, where my schedule's filled up. I really can't help more people what I do. I would love to help a lot more people. So now the company is going to change from a fractional CEO company into a very high end consulting company where over the years I've worked with, trained with some of the best, don't have the broad skill set I have, because some of my challenge was I couldn't just like hire people to work here and do what I do, because very few people have this 40 years of business experience and all
Right.
the other stuff that I've done. And I said, wow, there are some people that have a specialty, whether it could be recruiting, whether it could be sales training, or whether it could be AI or whatever. So, funny enough, I just kind of sat on this and I was kind of just putting it out there in the universe. Man, I think this company could really be more impactful and help a lot more people if I had some of these A players with a specific skill set that we can plug them in, and then I can service, a lot more clients. So that's where we are now, actually, which is kind of cool. A bunch of people had reached out to me, and none of stuff's interesting. I don't call anyone just based on my reputation. I get a lot of calls. People, like I said, opportunity, and if I see there's some opportunity, we can collaborate or work together. So that's the direction where we're heading in now. We're about to launch pretty soon, and I'm excited to expand a little bit and then provide more value and to help more real estate teams and other businesses when they arrive as well to grow and scale, just but doing the opposite of what the real estate industry does, who's enamored with vanity metrics like GCI, volume, or
Right. So what do you
so.
think that is? The profitability check with the real estate teams in particular, like they focus too much on the GCI. Oh, we're doing this much, but when you look at the fundamentals of the business, it's bad.
Well, yeah,
They're
it makes
living paycheck to paycheck essentially.
yeah, it makes total sense actually if you understand the real estate agent. The real estate agent is great at selling homes, and the best a lot of the best real estate agents are high expressives. The biggest nightmare for a really high expressive are numbers. It's the last thing they want to do is crunch numbers. They're not analytic at all. So it's and again, like I said earlier, most of them just sold houses and they just started to bring people in and building organizations without the business acumen. So they realize they have a lot of people, and then usually not because none of them are running a monthly P&L like they should be. They're just throwing up houses, paying the agents, paying the expenses that are there, and hoping there's going to be some money at the end of the day. So that actually worked, I would say, pre 2021. It wasn't that they were all great leaders. The market was moving so fast, deals were
Right.
getting put together in hours. They didn't realize they were probably leaving a ton of money on the table, but they were making money, some of them really good money. And then back to my Jim Rohn story, right? The interest rates went from 3, 4 up to 5, 6, 7% real quickly, and they soon realized their bank accounts were disappearing. And sadly, I'll share with you, I've gotten a lot of calls over the last few years, and people have to sell their primary residence because what happens when you get, in most cases, when the organization gets bigger, it becomes a family business. The other partner who's maybe working a W-2 job comes in to help out because the business is getting busier and they don't really understand they have enough money to pay more people. So now this one business is supposed to be supporting their family and all the income that comes with it. So when the market turned, I got so many calls. I got saying people like, "Hey, I had to sell my house. My savings are gone. I got credit card bills up the yin yang. I've got an SBA loan, and it's not working. Please help on there." So that's what I've been doing. It's funny. I got asked to do the follow-up Boss podcast with Ethan when he was doing that a couple of years ago, maybe. And he just threw out a question that I wasn't prepared for. It's like, Mike, what have you been doing the last couple of years? More specifically, you're helping teams. I said, Ethan, I've been doing a lot of business turnarounds because the model and the way you run an organization the last few years is way different if you want to be profitable than what you were running before. And again, these great salespeople that great at sales and all the good stuff didn't know business and they didn't know how to pivot from one model to the next model there. So that's what I'm doing mostly now is teaching them how to run profitable organizations in the current environment so they can make 7 figures and more quite easily, but you got to do it a lot differently in this environment than we used to do it on there. So yeah, it's been fun. First couple of years were pretty rough, but now after working, like I said, it takes about 2.5, 3 years, which is some of my clients now have been around that long. I've turned them around, and most of my schedule now
They're
is
doing
back
well
into
now.
million, or more, in profits per year again, which is kind of exciting because it was pretty brutal for a couple of years there. All the
Oh, I
calls
know.
and, about an organization that came out to $8 million in GCI, 9 million, 7 million. And I would force them to run their numbers and try to put a P&L together because they didn't have any. And I would say, you're at 0% profit. You're at 1% profit, maybe. That's the challenge. We've got to turn this business around and kind of reinvent it in a way, because there's a saying by Peter Drucker that says, if you challenge a market, you will lose. So you have to understand the market you're in and how to be successful in it. A good example would be in my market, July 2007 in New York is when we peaked out. We had the financial crisis, and selling retail homes just wasn't there, right? So I was like, darn, I'm a business guy. What is working? So not that I loved it, but for the next few years, I did foreclosures and short sales, a lot of them, where my market, 5,000 people left the industry because they didn't know how to pivot again. Right? Pivoting is really important.
So in
Knowing
today's market, what is the one number you think that leaders and CEOs should focus on? Like, what is the number that you primarily tell them, this is your first number that we need to look at it? And it's not GCI, obviously. Which one is it?
Yeah, no, obviously not. It's a great question, and it's funny you asked that question because I was asked to speak up in Park City to about 100 great, team leaders, CEOs. They asked me to do a presentation on there. And here's the challenge for probably, I don't know you, but most of you in the room on there, is that almost every real estate organization is looking at their numbers backwards. Is what they do is they say, all right, we brought in this much revenue, aka GCI, and then okay, we're going to pay the agents, this amount of called COGS, right? The agents split, and then we got to pay our bills, and then they hope they have profit. So what I explained to them that those four numbers need to be run in reverse.
Right.
First is you set your percentage target. Is the first number. If you're listening to this, that's the first number you set. How profitable do I want my business to be? And then from there, you can kind of estimate how much revenue you're bringing in, which then will educate you on how much you can afford to pay agents or how much expenses you can afford. But the percentage of profitability is the first number that should always be set before you do anything. And I've never heard any real estate team do it that way. 100 agents in the room were agreeing, like it was like an eye opener. We're all doing it backwards, hoping there would be profit left at the end, and the market turned. One of the reasons, which they didn't realize I had to share with them, one of the reasons that they're struggling is agents in today's market are selling 75% less home GCI than they were pre-2021. As an example, in my schedule, you can get a first agent, back before 21, doing 10 to 12 deals in their first year, 20 to 24 deals in their second year. Currently, the national average for agents selling a home is only 6. When the revenue decreases by that much, and then nationally we're selling about 20% less homes. We're down to about over 4 million or so. We're at 6 one year and averaging about 5. You can see the problem. They have still paying the agents probably too much in many cases, and then the expenses are just eating up any money that might be left over, and the companies don't make money.
I'm gonna tell you a little story. You tell me what you think about this. About 2 weeks ago, we do sell ISA services. Well, not services, but we do train ISAs and onboard them with teams and whatnot. So I got a call from this team leader saying, "Oh, I'm losing money on the deals that the ISA is making and setting appointments for on these lots." And I was like, how are you losing money? Like, are these your leads? The ISA is setting the appointment, your agent goes, the property sold, but end of the day, you're losing money. And she was like, yes. I was like, okay, let me look at your numbers. Those were her leads, and she was paying the agent 80% split, 80
Yeah,
20. And
that's
I'm like,
exactly.
why are you paying your agent 80 20? I mean, you're literally setting the appointment. The lead is yours. Was you generated the lead? You did the follow up through the ISA. The agent just signed the listing agreement. Pretty much, she didn't do much more than that, and you're paying an 80-20 split.
I'll tell
No
you.
shit, and excuse me the French, that you're losing money on those deals.
Yeah,
And she was like, well, it's the way I structure it. I'm like, I said exactly the same. You're looking backwards. If it's your lead and you're generating all the opportunity, you should determine first the healthy percentage that you want to get out of every one of those deals. But this
yeah.
is a perfect example of what
Yeah,
I'm
well,
seeing.
I'll explain why, actually, because again, they're not business people, so I don't think they understand it. So the first thing, setting that percentage of profitability first, but in totality, you have to set your whole economic model. That's step one. The economics of a business before you start doing anything should be determined to see if it's going to work, right? So I talk about this. I don't know if I heard it or made it up or whatever, but when I speak sometimes, I call real estate the sea of sameness, because rather than going to business school or reading books, everyone's copying each other. But no one talks about the bottom line. So they probably saw some other team or somebody and said, "Hey, I can get 80% here or this or that." And because a lot of them aren't good at recruiting, they're like, "Okay, I guess that's what it is." So, but what they don't understand, in almost all mid-sized to large real estate teams, the expenses will be right around 30%. So even if they were paying them 70%, they still will make no money. That's probably one of the biggest challenges on why they're not profitable. Most teams are paying agents like a brokerage model, and those high splits, which you cannot afford. So I'll give you like a simple example. What if the agent's COGS, their split, was 50%? You're going to cost you about 30% to run the company. Your max profit there is 20%, which is not bad. But I've built a lot of teams well into the 30% margins, which is really nice and
So
healthy
you
for.
recommend like a 60-40 split usually on a team that is well run?
No. That's too high again, because if you're at 60% to the agent and
No, no,
you're
no.
30.
Vice versa. I mean, the reverse, like
Yeah, you
sixty
want to
percent
keep
team,
you want to
forty
keep
percent
your
agent.
COGS. Yeah, the general rule, and all teams are different. There's a lot of different ways to get there, but yeah, the goal is to keep your COGS, the agent split, under 50% total. Whether, and like you were saying, there's most teams have the team deal at one number, and then if they bring in their own stuff at another number. So the combination of those both numbers has to be 50% or less. Again, I'll say 30% expenses. Otherwise, if you start getting into single digits and that kind of stuff, because then you're literally offering all the services, a team coaching, training, technology, but you're making the money of a brokerage. I was like, why don't you stop all that and just call yourself a brokerage and not offer any of the services, and you'll still make, brokerages now a little less, probably 3%, maybe 5%, but that would seem a lot
But yeah,
easier
but
to.
larger numbers, right?
Yeah. But if you're running a team, you gotta understand the model, and you've got to keep. That's the number I would share with you. That they overpay. Most teams will overpay because they either can't articulate their value proposition well enough, or again, they just don't want to recruit. Here's another thing that happens sometimes. They may get that model set correctly in the beginning, but then they tell agents, as you sell more, we're going to keep increasing your split. So those teams actually become less and less profitable over time, which seems ridiculous to me, than more profitable. So I would say that's a number most teams, small to mid-size, is a number they should focus on and figure out today and 3 years from now, 5 years from now, as it scales, do I continue to make more money or am I going to be making less money?
Right, right. And how do you go from rainmaker to CEO mentality? What is the one thing in your mindset that you have to change in order to make that happen?
Yeah, that's a great question, because this year, coincidentally, I don't know the exact number, maybe half a dozen agents. And they said, "Hey, I want to build an organization. I want a team. My other friend built a team. It seems like they're doing so well." And in their head, they're thinking they're going to work less hours and make more money. And anyone who built a team will tell you, especially it's called the J curve, right? For a while, probably 2 to 3 years minimum, you're actually going to work a lot harder and make a lot less money on there. And then they realize, this is my opinion on one of the flaws with the model, that goes back to that book I mentioned, MREA with Gary Keller. Is the book suggested that you take on a lot of expenses, technology, salaries, and your sales force are 100% independent contractors. Meaning, you have all these expenses, but your sales force, legally, you can't tell them exactly what to do, when to do it, or how to do it on there. So I'll tell you a number of my actually most successful clients, they bring in their agents on a W-2 type model on there, and it keeps their COGS number a lot less, and there are some more profitable teams there. And then on a W-2, you can tell the agent what to do, when to do, or how to do it because they're an employee, not an independent contractor on there. This is also something things pop in my head. But I was doing a mastermind here in Vegas where I live, up in one of the hotel rooms for about 15 team leaders, and they all said, "Yeah, we agree. Hiring part-time agents, that's never going to work. You can only hire full-time agents." I said, I totally agree with you. Could you please raise your hand if any of your agents on all these teams have worked 40 hours last week? No one put up their hand. Even though they call them full-time agents, none of these agents are coming to the office, prospecting for 3 hours, keeping in touch with people, and then working an 8 hour day. They essentially, a lot of them, especially with programs like Zillow, we just want to be fed a bottom of the funnel lead, go show a house, and write the contract, do a little inspection, appraisal thing. And honestly, most agents, they call them real estate salespeople, but they really just want, like that ISA thing you told me, that's what they want. I don't want to follow up with a lead. The average lead in the last 2 years, you have to follow up with a minimum 5 to 7 times, right? And then they don't want to keep in touch with all their past clients in fear. Which is, I heard Mark Davidson say this on the BAM podcast with Brian Lazine. David said, "Your industry," he came from, I think, entertainment. He's like, "This industry in real estate, I find quite unusual in certain respects." He's like, "It's the only industry after you help your client, sell their house or buy a house, we call them a past client. There's no other industry in the world where you provide a service. They're always your client. In real estate, we call it our past client, and it's one and done. Let's go get another one now." Because another way to make more profit is understanding the lifetime value of a lead is a lot less expensive and highly more profitable than going out getting new strangers day in and day out to work with indefinitely. In a healthy, very profitable team, what you should see is that your database past client sphere should start climbing year over year. And usually maxes out about 75% of all your business comes from there, not buying or trying to create more and more leads, which, again, people don't look at the data and how they understand these kind of things well. So this is why they hire me. And and there's always like, "Oh, now I get it." But not too many people get it. Like I said, they're usually just copying. They all go to the same conferences, and there's someone who's got a strong personality saying, "Oh yeah, this is how you do it. This is what I'm doing." Like, okay, I'll just do the same thing, and realizing an extremely high percent of them are making little to no money together.
Yeah, that's true. And now, you said earlier, if you don't have an admin, you're an admin yourself.
Correct.
So how do you go from, okay, I found an admin, now things are well delegated, I'm doing more. When do you know to bring the next second important
Yeah.
employee in order to start leverage and create that CEO mentality,
Mhm.
delegation processes, and then build an actual business, not a
Yeah.
job for yourself, right?
Yeah. Let me go back. I didn't really fully answer your last question. So when they decide they want to be more of a CEO than a salesperson, I give them what my definition is. I don't know if it's proper or not. So my definition of a CEO is you have to create incredible vision that would inspire people to come into your organization, step one. Step two, you have to attract a talent, and you have to be able to develop the talent so it works well within your organization. That's in my opinion, the three primary roles of a real
I
estate
agree.
team CEO, right? On there. So again, don't have those skills. So I teach them how to create vision and how to attract the right people and develop them. But the other mistake, in my opinion, I see is there's this, like, I don't know, maybe cachet about getting out of production. And I see that's a huge problem because the team lead is usually the biggest, most successful producer, and they bring in these agents doing 6 deals a year. And it's just like, cutting the mustard to pay the bills. So the next hire, again, these are all my opinions, and I've built a few hundred plus teams very successfully, is you don't bring in the next hire, which would be either a buyer's agent or a buyer specialist, until you're creating and generating more business than you could handle yourself. Like they're here to help you with the overflow, not to do all the deals on there. And I see that mistake a lot. And that as soon as they say, "Oh, I'm the CEO," okay, I'm jumping out of sales, and then almost all of them will have to jump back into sales. And I'll share. That's probably one thing I've done most in the last few months is I've had to tell the team leader who's been out of sales for a little bit, you got to get back in sales if you want to run a profitable organization. Like you have to hire a lot more agents because they're only doing about 6 on average, and some of them are doing even less than that. If you want to make the kind of money you want to make there, it's not going to kind of work out too well unless you get back in. So a lot of my team leaders, I would say university, maybe all close to all of them at this point. Yeah, because they're used to that money they used to have pre 2021, and right now that's the fastest and easiest way to get it is get back into sales, and then run an organization. Here's something else that's maybe interesting to the audience is all great companies, if you read a lot of books, almost all great companies are built in down markets. Everyone's complaining it's slow. This is when you're a little slow, you have opportunities to find the right people, build better systems. So one of my other clients gave me a great metaphor. It's like a slingshot. Oh man, it's getting slower, getting
Right.
slower. But the teams I'm working with now, they are set. As soon as those interest rates come down, they are gonna they're going to
Yeah.
rocket launch everyone because they're working on their business in the slow time. While everyone's complaining it's too slow. This is the opportunity. When markets are fast, it's very hard to create separation between you and the competition because it's a matter of who can run faster. Everyone's running
Right.
fast, so and this is
I
this is
totally agree with you on that because I created my business. This last business, because I have multiple businesses, but I created the virtual assistant company during a downtime when the interest rates started
yeah,
to go up,
yeah.
and I focus on software creation in order to have very low costs. How
Oh,
to create better training, how to ensure that our marketing is as effective as possible. And we've been telling in our meetings, we're being like, okay, we're adding clients every month in this down market. Let's see
yes.
what's going to happen. As soon as the market picks up, we're just going to be so far ahead of the competition because we use our
Yeah.
own softwares, we use our own marketing. We are very lean. We know how to operate efficiently. Right now, we're doing well. I don't want to imagine how it's going to go when the market turns down, like
Yeah,
turns
that's
back on us.
yeah. You touched on another good observation. So another challenge teams having with profitability is stateside labor has gotten more and more expensive. And so the salaries are usually the biggest line item on the P&L. And in most cases, if you have everyone working stateside here, if you have a mid-sized to large organization, you're going to struggle. So yeah, every one of my organizations are leveraging VAs or AI now, AI employees to
Right,
reduce
AI.
the
How are you guys implementing that AI? Are you going heavy on that?
oh yeah, all my teams are using it. So here's what I learned now. This is again the industry. They go to a conference, and the conference people are going to teach them how to build their AI employees. Right? They pay them a ton of money. You do this first. You do that. These are salespeople. They spend a ton of money on the conference or the modules or whatever they're selling. And guess how many of them actually successfully build an AI employee? Hardly any. So I partnered with a company that actually builds these AI employees for them. They're fully baked in. One is the chief of staff, which is basically admin, one to run the database, run marketing at extremely, extremely low cost to them.
Right.
To give you an idea, I think I hired one for my wife to help her run our company, and they charged me around $2,500 to build it out. And then the only expense for me is how many tokens I use on Claude every month, which will average about $100 to $150 for a full-time employee, 7 days a week on there, which is a great way to cut down expenses uh, on the salary side on there. And here's the beauty of it: she logged on to with that company twice. In the first one, they explained what they were doing and how it's going to work. The second one, they asked her to download Telegram to her telephone, and she has to know nothing about tech. She has to know nothing. She just needs to know how to speak into her Telegram and ask her employee to do something. That's what most of these teams need. They don't know they're not tech companies. Most of them have a CTO, and nor do they, in my opinion, should be spending time learning how to build tech. They should be building organizations, learning how to sell more homes in a really tough market. So I'll give the audience another term where it's really tough out there. It's been a number of years, but as everyone's getting beaten up, my job for a lot of them, I would tell you, is to keep them in the game because all industries, almost all industries, are cyclical. And it feels like it's permanent. Like, oh my gosh, it's never gonna be easy again. But just
It's
from
always
getting beaten
painful.
up for so long, yeah, it's painful. But I let them know this industry is cyclical. At some point, probably based on my guess is this whole oil crisis we have going on. When that kind of gets rectified one way or another, that will cause the stock market to go up. And then interest rates will start to come down, and they get close to probably right around high fives, maybe low sixes. Yeah, because everything is psychological. When I started real estate, I think interest rates, if I remember, around 6%. The old timers were like, "Wow, that's cheap. I paid 18% for my mortgage." Back when they were buying houses. So it was perception becomes reality. So what happened to our market, our homeowners, and a lot of them took out these 3%, I think 4% loans, and then when it went up to these higher numbers, like, oh my gosh, that's so expensive. But now it's been a few years of these higher 6, 7%. That seems more the norm. So when it comes down, right closer to the low sixes, maybe high fives, psychologically it's going to feel cheap, and then affordability will expand as well, and the markets will start to get much, much busier and much, much faster again. So it's not, we don't know when, it's just a matter of time. So my job is just to keep their head in the game, and they're getting scars, they're getting beat up, but just we got to keep moving
If
forward
I
and
had to
building.
take a wild guess, I would say middle of next year, end of next year,
Okay.
based on
Yeah, I know.
current
I
situation.
don't. I've been following interest rates since I started. I remember there was a company, Keeping Current Matters, and you could buy these beautiful slides for them for marketing purposes. And one of them was always what was it? National Association of Mortgage Brokers, Zillow, NAR, and I think Zillow actually. They all predicted where interest rates would be over the next 4 quarters. From a guy who's tracked that for a couple decades, I will share with you, they've been wrong about all the time. I realize no one really knows. There's so many variables to interest rates, right? Inflation, where that's going to sit will determine if they can move them up or down. And so, yeah, I give up. I don't ever
Well,
want to
the
guess
reason
that.
I was saying middle of next year and end of next year is because if the oil crisis continues, the market is going to stretch quite a bit for the next 12 months, give or take, and it's not going
Yeah,
to tolerate that much pain. So I think that the pain threshold for the current U.S. market is about 6 months to 12 months to be through this oil crisis, and then
yeah.
either
Fingers crossed.
we solve it or rates have to come down because there's going to be more unemployment, higher inflation, and all that good stuff. So
Yeah, I don't know if you.
um,
I'm not an economic, but I know a little bit because I'm into space. So lower interest rates, inflation will start to get pushed up. So as I understand, they're trying to get this inflation somewhere around 2% or so. Because if they bring interest rates down, inflation goes higher, and that's bearable. If
yeah,
inflation,
yeah, in theory.
they lower interest rates, and then I mean, even I live in Vegas, and people were screaming the price of eggs were like $15 for a dozen, and milk, and all this
Yeah,
other
but the
nonsense.
way the Fed
Anyway,
has behaved is it's always labor over inflation. So even if we have higher inflation but labor goes down, they'll reduce the rates in order
okay,
to
okay.
accommodate for
I'm
that.
not
So
an economist. I know enough to be dangerous and kind of
right.
understand it. So I hope you're right, and then we'll all celebrate and just take a little bit of a deep breath. Yes, I did the same with this. That's
There
all
you
I can
go.
do.
So I call this section rapid fire questions, Mike.
Yeah,
And you can
fire
just give
away.
me short answers if you want. All right. So revenue or profit?
Profit.
Profit. Bigger team or leaner team?
Leaner.
Leaner team. One number every team owner should always look at all the time.
Every month they need to look at their percentage of profitability target and know if they hit it. If not, make adjustments.
Awesome. What is the one thing that every CEO should have as a responsibility, and what is the one thing that every CEO should not have as a responsibility? And it's particularly in real estate teams, right? Or
So CEO has the responsibility, and the COO should not.
Should know
That,
one that they should always have as a responsibility, and one that they should never have as a responsibility in their
ah,
organization.
oh, that's an interesting question. So, well, I want to reframe it a little bit more into what the challenge is actually. Is starting from the CEO role. So I guess it's one thing they shouldn't be doing, but they do. I'll reverse that for you. Is if you ask any of these teams if they have standards, I think most of them would tell you they do. When I ask them a simple question, are you enforcing your standards? Universally, they all tell me, not really. If you have a standard and you're not enforcing it, you're running your team on suggestions, which doesn't work. Is I think from the top down, the biggest mistake I see in leadership in real estate teams. They're keeping their people accountable to the things they said they would do, or generating the right amount of revenue they need to keep them on the team or not there. And then on the that's more the COO, TEO, the COO. I think actually moving forward, that all CEOs and OOs, and that's what we're looking to hire here too, have to have a strong tech background. If they're operating and operationalizing a company in 2026, they've got to know AI, integrations, APIs, and all those things. I think without, it's almost like a combination of COO, CTO is the only type of, I think, COO that will thrive in the new environment that we're in now. Would be something they would have to do, and then something they wouldn't. Oh, I'll give you the biggest mistake actually on the COO side. So COO, almost everything in the organization rolls up to them. So when everything rolling up to them, if you speak to most of them, I ask them how many hours you're working. 8 hours a day, they tell me 10 hours because everything is rolling up to them on there. So here's a mistake. This is, in my opinion, almost all COOs also need their own dedicated assistants, because to be a great COO, you need to spend about 80 to 90% of your time working in the business. But the true value to the company is you get to look at all the systems and the numbers and the technology and find ways to make it better, cheaper, faster. But none of them have that bandwidth, and they're just keeping their head above water day in and day out. Without back to the old, I don't know if you know the story about Google and how Gmail was created. They had an incubator there at Google, and the employees, I remember the percentage, it was they were given 20% of their work week to go create a project with no restrictions. Just go create something, be creative. And this is how we have Gmail now from Google. The COOs have no time to be creative and have ways to improve their organizations because too many things are rolling up to them. So the way you would handle that is the COO is only supposed to do A activities, and their assistant is managing any B or C activities. And that will then give them the bandwidth of 10% or 20% of their time to work on the business with no distractions to make it
Right,
better.
right. It's a great answer. I wasn't expecting
Thank you.
it. One last message you want to give to every team member out there that is watching us.
Well, first is stay in the game, keep putting one foot in the other, and then learn your numbers. Real estate is not selling houses as much as it is a math equation. Learn the math equation that will work in your market under current market conditions, reverse engineer it from profitability back up to revenue, and you can easily earn 7 figures plus in this market, but you got to pivot most likely from what you were doing to something that works in today's market, as Peter Drucker has said. No challenge in
Appreciate
the
it.
markets.
Thank you for coming, Mike. Let's stay in touch. I'll send you, a friend request. We can, exchange ideas every once in a while, and I hope to have you in a future episode in
Yeah,
soon.
I love sharing actually because I realize, I mean, I can only help so many people. So the more if anyone can get something out of this podcast and make the organization bigger, healthier, faster, makes me happy. I'm put on this planet, right? I'm a giver. I just want to help, provide, and make it a better place for all of us. And older families will have such a better quality of life if they can all help them to make. Oh, let me give you one more thing before we close. The other reason why the profits are so important, and you have to have them, not only to make money for yourself, your organization cannot grow if you can't reinvest money into it to get to the next level or make the next hire. So I have teams out here that are running with no COO or no sales manager and like a hero minion model, which doesn't work well because they don't have enough profit to afford the salary they need. That's the other detriment of not having profit. You can't grow. You will stall.
Yeah, that's right. You have to reinvest in the business continuously. Thank you,
Correct.
everyone, for watching us. Thank you, Mike, for coming here. Let's stay in touch. All right.
Well, yeah. Thank you, everybody. Have a great
Thank you.
day.
Bye bye. Mike, thank you for joining us and challenging the way we think about what a successful real estate business actually looks like. Because at the end of the day, more transactions, more agents, and more revenue doesn't necessarily mean you're building a better company. What matters is what you're actually creating behind those numbers. And to everyone watching, if this conversation made you rethink about the way you're running your business, make sure to follow, like, share, and leave us a comment. Until next time, build smarter, lead better, and keep cracking the code.